You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. My name is Clark, and this is episode 351. Another solo intro today from me for the Friday episode, but I do have another special guest interview that I'll play in just a minute. But off the top, I just want to make a quick plug for the 5 Card Guys YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to at youtube.com/c/@5cardguys. Don't worry, I'll put the link in the show notes. Now, most of our attention has been on building up our Instagram and Facebook pages, which now has a combined 70,000 plus followers. We're so grateful for all of you. But lately, we've been getting a little surge in the number of subscribers on our YouTube page as we've been uploading longer video clips of our pod. We're also just beginning to brainstorm a lot of ideas these days to get even more hobby video content throughout the year, and we can't wait for you guys to see it. So if you're not subscribed yet, please do check us out. We're so close to hitting 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. And like I said, I'll include all the links to our socials in the show notes below. Okay, that's it for my shameless plug. Just one more quick update. If you're a regular listener of the pod, I'm glad to announce that one of my co-hosts, Will, and I have secured a couple of booths for the upcoming Sport Card Expo here in the Toronto area, which begins April 30th and runs to, I believe, May 3rd. Again, if you're in the GTA, we'd love for you to stop by and say hello. We'll definitely release more details as we get closer to the date, including where we'll be situated at once we find that information out. But this is just an early heads up, and I'm hoping that I can set up a chair where we can do some interviews on scene and maybe even rip some product together. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. All right, so like I promised, we do have a guest interview we recorded earlier this month. His name is Scott Lang, and you can find his IG page at PSA1 only. Yes, that's a hint at what his collection consists of, and I had a great time chatting about his cards and how he got back into the hobby. I think it's a really cool story. So, without further ado, enjoy my interview with Scott. Hey guys, we got another special guest on the pod today. His name is Scott Lang. I'm excited to talk with him because he's got a pretty unique collection. His IG handle is at PSA1 only, so you can guess what his collection consists of. Yes, they are primarily PSA1 graded cards. And his bio, if you read it, it says, quote, "I collect PSA1 iconic cards. My main focus is on my favorite players, legends, and GOATs," end quote. So I've got so many questions. So without further ado, Scott, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Like I mentioned before, I've never done this, so this is a first for me.
Well, this will be easy because hopefully it's just a natural conversation because I really want to get to know about your PSA collection. But before we do, I'm wondering if we could just start with your hobby journey. You know, when did you start collecting, and what did you collect before this PSA1 collection?
So I am 46 years old, and like most people, I started collecting as a kid. I think I was, maybe about 8 years old or so when I first started collecting. I still remember the first card I ever got was a 1987 Topps Mark McGwire, the one with the wood border. And
Mark McGwire, wow.
From there, from there I just, I was kind of hooked. And I would say most of my teenage years, I was really into collecting. I had a good friend, and his mom and my mom would take us to trade shows, card shows, and we would go to baseball games and wait after the game and for autographs, and I was huge into it as a kid, and then I pretty much stopped my entire adult life until about a year ago. I picked it back up.
Okay. I mean, your story is very familiar to us here because we're all, we all have similar stories.
Yeah, I figure. So I got back into it about a year ago. to be honest with you, what kind of got me back in the hobby was Otani. And my son is in the military, and he recently went to Japan, and he's a Pokemon kid growing up, and he's big into the Japanese culture, and so um, I honestly I just kind of got hooked on Otani like everybody else. So I got back in the hobby just wanting an Otani rookie card, and so I got one, and then I went all in. I went all in on Otani and bought a bunch of Otani cards, then reluctantly sold them all. And I mean that's honestly how I got back in. He was kind of the man.
Yeah, absolutely. Listeners of the pod will know that we talk about Otani a lot because we're just
I
enamored
bet.
by his baseball playing skills and his baseball cards. Yeah, that's a cool story, and I love hearing that you got back into it because of Otani, like a lot of us did. And I'm also we're of similar age. I'm 47, and I got back into it 7, 8 years ago. But there was this long period where I didn't collect, so it's kind of cool to have us. Our age demo coming back to the hobby
Yeah, yeah.
and collecting something that's so nostalgic to us, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I'm kind of drawn to the 80s and 90s cards, which I know a lot of people call them junk wax and worthless, but those are the ones that kind of they do have the nostalgia to me.
Yeah. No, awesome. So you know what? I'm really intrigued. You know, when I saw your Instagram account, I thought this was really cool, especially now that cards are pretty expensive these days. It's booming again, and I thought this is a very unique and clever way to collect what you love, essentially. And so I want to know when and why did you come up with a plan to just collect PSA one cards?
Yeah, so honestly, you kind of hit it on the head of how it started, but it may have been a little bit over a year ago, but when I got back in, like I said, I first started collecting Otani, and he was expensive. Not quite as expensive as he is now, but he was still expensive. And I went all in. I think I had close to $10,000 in Otani cards. I had the Red Wing, and I had a bunch of
Wow,
the Japanese BBM cards and his Bowman Chrome and some autographs. I had a numbered to 50 autograph card. Um, so I had a lot of money invested, and
amazing.
to be honest with you, it was kind of a two part, double-edged sword. I loved having the cards, but I also felt kind of guilty having that much money wrapped up in cards with so many more cards that I still wanted. I'm
Yeah,
a huge Michael Jordan fan, Ken Griffey
right.
Jr. fan, Bo Jackson. There was all these other guys that I still wanted cards, and I started looking and adding up. I'm like, man, if I actually ever bought everything I wanted, I'd have 50 to 100 grand in cards. And so basically, long story short, I ended up selling all the Otani cards, and I started collecting Michael Jordan cards. And my OCD kind of kicked in a little bit.
Mm,
Grading was not a thing when I was a kid. So I didn't like the idea of having, one card be a PSA 10, one card be a SGC or BGS, and the numbers kind of vary. And so I wanted them to kind of all be equal.
hmm.
A Michael Jordan team leader card is a more valuable card than I don't know, a base starting lineup card or something like that. But if the grades are kind of flip flopped,
Yeah,
the base card could be a more valuable card. And, just brought me back to my childhood. And, I liked it to where the better card was a more valuable card than, let's say, a less valuable card, but in a better grade. So when I started with the Jordan cards, I just
mm,
went all PSA 8. And I started to quickly realize again it was going to get very expensive. I did get a lot of
yeah,
the common inserts like the scoring kings and things like that, but you start getting into the jambalayas and a lot of the other cards, and any grade is expensive, but especially an 8. And almost the exact same thing happened again with the Otani. I started feeling guilty. I had so much wrapped up, and there was so much more I still wanted. And how it basically started was I came across a Michael Jordan 86 Fleer rookie and a PSA 1, and I grabbed it. And that particular card looked really good and eye appeal. It just had a small crease
Mm,
that was hardly noticeable, but it was centered really well, and the corners might have been a touch soft, but they weren't horrible. And it just got me thinking, if I were to go to PSA ones, I could kind of spread my love around. I could get Jordans and Griffeys and Otanis and everybody.
sure.
Especially when you kind of look at the vintage cards, the Mickey Mantles and the Willie Mays and people like that. PSA ones are pretty much the only ones I can afford anyway.
Yeah.
A Jackie Robinson Lear or a Leaf rookie card is something I want to have one day, and you know that and a Mickey Mantle card are almost 10 grand just for a one, and so that's kind of where it started was the Jordan
Right.
rookie, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And so that's what I do now. Even if it's a cheap base card
Yeah.
or an expensive rookie card, they're all kind of PSA one, and they're all kind of level playing ground as far as the value.
I love that. I think that's genius. I think that's really creative. And before I go on, like you mentioned, this journey started by you selling off all your Otani cards. We know what the Otani card market is like. Do you regret that decision at all, or do you like the new journey that you're on now with
Well,
PSA
I
ones?
mean, I definitely like the new journey I'm on. I am a bit
Mm.
OCD, so part of me, if I still had them, it would feel kind of weird. I like having my collection kind of be uniform, but obviously I regret it. Especially
Sure.
the Red Wing card was a PSA 10, and I don't even know. I'm
Oh
afraid to look.
wow.
Like last time I've seen some of those listed on eBay, they're 20, $30,000. I'm afraid to look if that's the actual price of what they sell for, but I think when I sold it, it was maybe 2 grand. So, I definitely regret that. I do,
Mm,
however, have an Otani Bowman Chrome, the batting card that I just submitted to PSA, and that I'm hoping for a one to come back. It does have two creases in it, so at least I'll be back to having
yeah.
at least one Otani card.
Okay. I mean, there's a perfect segue to the next question I have is, do you have any rules when collecting PSA 1 cards, right? Do they already have to be slabbed? I guess they don't because you just submitted one,
Yeah.
but do you purposely look for one that's in bad condition or yeah, I'm
So
just curious about the
yeah.
process.
So I don't really have any specific rules, but I will say the biggest thing to me is the centering. I don't mind the crease, I don't mind the soft
Mm,
corners, but a really off center card is kind of ugly to me. So I personally prefer them to be as centered as possible. Um, and up until now, every card that I have has been pre-slabbed. I bought off of eBay or somewhere online, and they've all been pre-slabbed. But I've quickly learned that, some of the cards, as my collection's grown, some of the cards that I really do want to own are really low pop count in a PSA one, and
yes.
some of them are
Yeah.
literally one card in existence or even no card in existence. So I've recently started to
Mm,
try to gather up some raw cards. So I have a bunch of saved searches on eBay for damaged or creased or different keywords to look for beat up
yeah.
cards. And so I
Yeah.
have about 50 cards right now of everything from Joe Montana's rookie to just again iconic cards that I'm gonna submit to PSA. And in my mind, I think 90% of them should come back a one. So I'm hoping.
Yeah, that's hilarious because when most 99% of us when we submit to PSA we're hoping for tens, but
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
going the
Yeah.
exact opposite way. Something I thought of for anyone that wants to collect PSA 1 cards, they could theoretically damage the card themselves, but do you have a hard rule against that? Do you have to find it? Is it about
Yeah.
the search that's more appealing to you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that was kind of the thing. So when I was collecting the Jordan PSA 8s or the Otani 10s, it was almost too easy. I wouldn't say
Yeah.
it's easy to find them. Maybe not easy to foot the bill and pay for them, but it's easy to find them. And
Hmm.
I think doing the PSA one kind of brings me back to my childhood again, and it makes it more like collecting. It's almost like when I was a kid, you'd open a pack and you'd find that Michael Jordan card or something, and you'd get excited, and it's a card you wanted for a year, or you chased it. And it's kind of the feeling I get now. Obviously being an adult, it's a little bit different, but it's not easy to find certain cards like that Otani Bowman Chrome batting card that I have. I look at the PSA pop counts. I don't think there's even one in existence in a one. So if I can find one, to me, it's, brings
Right.
back a little bit of that feeling as a kid of chasing a card. Now, yeah, obviously in theory, I could buy a card and wrinkle it up or bend it up and submit it, but I have not done that. Again, I'm just trying to find cards that are
Okay.
already damaged. Everyone that I've purchased that's not
Yeah.
pre-slabbed pretty much already has a crease, and you search on eBay, you can find raw cards that are beat up. Now, I will admit I have a couple cards that are a PSA 1.5 that I'm gonna try to crack and just
Okay.
resubmit and hope for a one, but I haven't
Yeah.
damaged any cards myself.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I was just curious, and you kind of alluded to this point already, but I don't know if anyone else would be surprised by this, but the pop counts for some of these PSA 1 cards are really low. And I did some research and I looked at your IG account, saw a few of your cards. And, for example, the Wayne Gretzky 1980 O-Pee-Chee card, his second year card, a PSA 10, there's 38, but in a PSA 1, there's even less, 33, right? The price differential
Wow.
is
Wow.
astounding. 40,000 for a
Yeah.
PSA 10, $24 for a PSA 1. I'll list a few more. Ken Griffey Jr., your 1989 Fleer rookie card. There's almost 6,000 PSA 10s, but only 13 PSA 1s, and you got one of them. So you got one of
Wow.
13.
Yeah.
The Mark McGuire, 1985 Tops, his USA baseball team, 307 PSA 10s, but only 26 PSA 1s. And this is the craziest one of all, the Steph Curry 2009 Tops rookie card. There's 372 PSA 10s, but only 6 PSA 1s, and Scott's got one of those 6. Curious, which PSA 1 card was the hardest for you to find?
Uh, that Curry was pretty tough. And what's funny is that's actually the second Curry PSA one I've owned. The first one I purchased,
No
it had a
way.
tear. Yeah, it had a tear in the corner, like it was completely missing a corner. And that was one of the first PSA ones I got, and I was ecstatic to find it. But to be honest, I just wasn't happy seeing that torn corner. And somehow miraculously another PSA
Yeah.
one came available and I grabbed it and then sold the first one. So at the time there was only 5 pop count. Now there's a 6. But I have to imagine that
Right.
there's not going to be many of those. At least in modern cards, a lot of people are, preserving the cards and they
Sure.
get slabbed and cased immediately. So um, it's pretty rare to find some of the more
Yeah.
modern cards that low. Again, it's ironic that that's one of the tougher ones. Yet I've
Right.
had 2 of them, but that one's a pretty tough one to find. Um,
Yeah.
like I said, I have some raw ones that I think will be pretty tough as well. The low pop count on the PSA ones is kind of intriguing. I kind of think a couple things about that, but obviously there's probably a lot of these damaged cards in existence that people just don't spend the time or the money to get graded just because
Yes.
they're I feel like a lot of people kind of want the sixes and higher or something, but
Right.
a lot of people, especially the kind of the lower end cards, who
Mm.
wants to spend 40, $50 to get a $5 card graded?
Right.
But for for me, again, it's my OCD kicking in, and I want them all to match. And look, I don't want to have a PSA slab and a raw card. I want them all to look the same. So,
Yeah.
I'll
No, that
gladly pay the $40 just for them to all look the same.
to each their own. But yeah, no, that's definitely cool. You also talked about how you save a lot of money, obviously, by collecting this way, especially for some of these iconic cards, PSA 10s. Some of them are in 6 figures, but even some of the PSA 1s are, uh, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
uh, uh, they're not that cheap. What would you say is the most you paid for a PSA 1 slab card?
Uh, I, the Michael Jordan rookie. I want to say that was about $2,500, maybe. Now,
Oh
obviously,
wow.
that one's pretty iconic. I mean, that's
Yeah.
everybody in the industry is collecting that card regardless of the grade. But
Yeah.
I would say obviously Wayne Gretzky rookie card, Nolan Ryan rookie card,
Mm,
Tom Brady.
yeah.
Um,
The goats.
a lot of those are 500 to 1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that Tom, I forgot about the Tom Brady. That's a pretty tough one to find in a one as well.
Mm, that's yeah.
That Tom Brady Bowman, I think, is a
Right.
pop five or something, somewhere around there.
Oh wow. And you have one right now?
Yeah, yeah, I've got that one.
Amazing. Um, you know, again, you said this earlier in the interview. Not all PSA ones are created equal. Are you surprised at some of the conditions of these PSA one cards, like that they are actually slabbed a PSA one?
Yeah, so honestly, that is a big thing. You know, I, yeah, so again, I agree that not all PSA ones are created equal, and
Hmm.
it almost seems like there's, a ceiling. Obviously, too good is going to be above a PSA one, but there's almost no floor, and it's almost like there's such a wide variety of some PSA ones are, I've seen some Mickey Mantle cards darn near torn in half that
Right.
were a PSA one. And so on the flip side, I I've seen some more modern cards where the
Mm.
backside has a dent, almost like a fingernail dent or some kind of crease, but it shows absolutely nothing on the front side, and they still got a PSA one. So
Yeah. No, I thought that was interesting to see. Some of the cards I saw on your Instagram is like, how is this a PSA one? But you kind of explained it really well that's the case. Um, is there a card that you've been looking for a while that you're still hoping to get in a PSA one?
Uh, I mean, there's plenty of cards that I still want. Some of them are not necessarily hard to find. Like I mentioned before, the Jackie Robinson Leaf rookie card,
Hmm.
the Mickey Mantle 51 rookie card, Willie Mays, Roberto Clemente. There's a lot of vintage
Right.
PSA 1 cards that I want that are on my list, and hope to own those one day. Um, in the more modern
Yeah.
stuff, to be honest with you, I'm not real big into modern stuff. I do like Otani, um, but I'm gonna, for the most part, stick to probably 90s and older. I do have the Jordan. I do have the Jordan,
Okay.
so that's kind of one of my grails. Um, maybe one day if I ever splurge, I'd love to
Yeah.
get the Jordan Star card, the 101. That would probably be
Mm,
my biggest grail card if I
yeah.
could find that in a PSA one day.
Nice.
Um, but that's expensive even in a one.
Yes. But that's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah. Um, I really just have one last question for you, Scott, and I wanted to start asking all the guests on this pod the
Sure.
same thing. Do you have a card in mind that you would never ever sell for whatever reason? Maybe it has tremendous nostalgic value. Maybe there's a super cool story behind how you got the card. I was wondering if you have a card like that in mind, and if you do, I'd love to hear the story behind it.
Well, unfortunately, I really don't have um, a card that I still had as a kid or any kind of crazy story. But like I said, the Jordan rookie was my first PSA one. Jordan's pretty much my all-time favorite sports guy. So that would be the one card that, regardless of anything else, I would always keep that card and hand it down to my kids. And um, hopefully I have many more to hand down, one day. But I think that's my favorite card that I own, just because I was a huge Jordan kid. Even though I grew up in St. Louis, we didn't have a basketball team, so Jordan was the guy, of course, and
Yeah.
that's my guy.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. That's totally understandable. A lot of Jordan fans, obviously, both in sports and in the hobby. So not a surprise there. But yeah, Scott,
Yeah.
really appreciate your time. I know people won't know this when they hear this on the pod, but we've had a lot of connection issues, but we were able to power through this interview, and I really wanted to connect with you. So I appreciate that, and just want to wish you luck finding more PSA one cards to add to your collection.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. This has been awesome. And again, sorry for the connection issues.
No worries. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.